I want to wrap up the discussion of transgenderism with my conclusions. Truthfully, I have found it difficult to get my head around all that I have learned in my research. Like many, I am skeptical of change, but the information leads me more toward change than away from it. As I considered my conclusions, I found myself asking whether gender transition surgery and endocrine hormone treatment were therapeutically effective for people suffering from gender dysphoria. This was an important query for me because it helped me formulate my conclusions. I found that the short answer is that for many adults with severe gender dysphoria, hormone therapy and some surgeries are associated with reductions in their dysphoria and improvements in their quality of life on average. But there are a lot of qualifiers in that answer. The effects are variable and not universal. Evidence quality ranges from moderate to low. Long-term mental health outcomes are mixed, and the trade-offs are real and must be weighed individually. The most accurate answer I found is that these remedies are helpful for some, not a guaranteed solution, and not risk-free. Now, the evidence for youth is even more qualified, more limited, weaker, and riskier. So where am I? Today, I see transgenderism and gender transition as primarily an individual self-image dissatisfaction response. In an era when self-interest and self-image motivates so much behavior, an individual controlling their own self-image is right at the top of the list of life purposes for many. This is not a condemnation, simply an assessment based on observation. But it is this overarching conclusion that leads me to draw a number of other conclusions as a result of this study. Like almost all other self-image motivated surgical and chemical treatments, were the procedures of gender transition forced on anyone, as they unfortunately have been in the past, they would be called mutilation. They remain mutilation. Voluntary mutilation remains mutilation. It is important for us to have the right frame of mind when we talk about gender transition. Second, transgenders, whether they have or have not taken steps to transition, should be barred from military service in a voluntary force. And I say this for two reasons. Primarily, I believe gender dysphoria and all other neuroses and psychoses are or should be disqualified. Secondarily, the risks and costs of surgical and endocrinal treatment of gender dysphoria are unreasonable for the military and taxpayer to bear, potentially for a lifetime. Third, publicly funded medical care and coverage should likewise not pay for gender transition. It should not pay for any self-image altering procedures like tattoos, piercing, gender transition, tummy tucks, or other cosmetic procedures. We simply can't afford them. Fourth, Schools and churches and other institutions who are responsible for the care of children should not be involved in the gender care or gender affirmation of the children in their charge. The evidence shows that the discussion should be primarily between people and their doctors, and for children, parents should be the decision makers and the ones talking with doctors. I recognize that many children have dysfunctional families. In these cases, the courts, working with competent medical professionals, may have to intercede, but there are no other government agencies other than the courts that should be given license in this area. I support medical professional associations developing guidelines and oversight boards to ensure that doctors' reputations and medical industry profits are never the underlying motivators for any decisions of this nature. Sixth, gender transition or any cosmetic, self-image altering surgical procedures are not a right. We are a free country, guaranteed rights of liberty, life, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, precedent establishes that our freedom in this pursuit is in one of three lanes. One lane is rights, like freedom of speech, which are entitlements we have agreed to protect for all of us. Self-image altering procedures are not one of these. I do not see this as a religious issue. A person who has a problem with their self-image may think that God made a mistake, and others may see any action to change someone's self-image as a declaration that God was wrong. I do not agree with either of these. God was not wrong in creating me as I am. If I am not satisfied with me as I was created, my actions do not make God wrong. They simply confirm that I am rebellious. Well, we all are. Eighth, finally, I believe the conclusions expressed in my earlier videos on transgenderism remain valid and appropriate to remember. Family and community acceptance of an individual who decides they are transgender helps those people feel better about themselves, and any apparent increase in the number of people expressing they are transgender appears more associated with increased social acceptance than any measurable environmental, biologic, or genetic reason. Efforts to try and convince a person that they should embrace their biologically or genetically assigned gender as their gender identity after they have concluded there is a mismatch are probably unproductive and may be harmful. And personalized dialogue and further research are important to ensure medical care remains patient-centered and responsive to individual and community needs, and does not become simply a way for professionals to be right. Let me wrap up by saying that based on all I have learned, were I ever asked to advise anyone suffering from dysphoria, whether gender or any other self-image form of dysphoria, I would not recommend any surgical or endocrinal treatment. The evidence and the results in the long term simply don't seem compelling. I see these types of responses as akin to driving fast to get through traffic. Too risky to everyone, with too little reward, and very manageable by many other things. I look forward to hearing responses from you. Aloha.